Hi, and welcome to Wisefish Chess Academy. We have another beautiful game that you're going to look through today. Praggnanandhaa versus Abdusattorov. This was a game played in the GCT 2025 Super Bet Classic in Romania. This game was played in round three, and Praggnanandhaa with the white pieces and Abdusattorov with the black pieces. Now, these are two youngsters, one from India and the other from Uzbekistan, and they're very, very competitive youngsters. This is a beautiful game that we are going to look at, and you'll see Praggnanandhaa won this game, but you'll see that the way they played it was really, really fantastic. So let's dive right into the game. Praggnanandhaa played c4. Abdusattorov played g6. B4, 6, pretty standard stuff that I like, the fianchetto positions. And then we have B5 played, and we are typically into a Granfell defense kind of setup. Now, Granfell is not very popular again, with a lot of players because most of them don't really know how to defend with black pieces. But at the other top level, most of these games end in rows. And so when black really wants to just draw, we'll go in for that, and everything is pretty standard. It'll just get better into a draw. However, this one ended with so many blood spilled. So after d5, knight f3, standard moves. Then we have bishop g7, bishop g5, an interesting one, attacking the knight, but it leads to this interesting move, knight to e4. Now, knight to e4, you have to be very careful about it, because it is not exactly very straightforward. If you take the knight with your knight, and I'll just show that, take with the pawn, then all of a sudden you have a problem. You cannot defend this pawn. And if you have to play your knight to, it's the only way to defend it. If you play your knight to e5, then you just land into kindergarten for quick. So when the knight goes there, it's a bit tricky what to do. You also cannot take this with the knight, because if you do, then knight captures on g5. Knight takes, pawn e6, and all of a sudden you have both knights hanging. And the only best way to give it up is by taking an s7 and trying to damage the structure of. So the game went on after knight to e5. Bishop went back, retreated back to f4, castles, and d to e3, c5. Now c5 is one of those moves that really just keeps the game alive. Blast the center and make sure that it's not easy for white to actually get time to consolidate properly. You have to put your opponents in always is keep them in an uncomfortable position. To don't play the moves that are just so subtle. Well, the different positions ask for different kinds of approaches. But here, c5 was a very nice move. So I captured the pawn, the center, so the best moves that you can play anyway here. Queen takes, bishop e2, takes, then knight c6. Of course, optionally was queen a5, check, and the best move here would be queen to d2, and queen captures, king captures, centralizing the king, because we're anyway heading into an endgame directly. So that wasn't played. Knight c6 was played. White castled. Bishop f5. h4. Now h4 is an ambitious move. Creates space on the king side, but also this pawn kind of like undermines any h6, g5 kind of things. Take away the bishop, knight from the respective f4 and f3 squares. So rook ac8. h5. That move is a typical move, that kind of position. The idea is because you cannot capture it, and even though you do, it just damages your structure as black. This pawn is basically headed for h6 to create a bind on the king side. And you'll see that that idea was very very, very strong in this game. So rook f2 d8, and then we have h6, like we had said, bishop f6, queen to a4. Now this move could have been played 3 moves ago before even the h4, h5, h6 pawn push, and that basically gained a lot of space for the queen, because here in the light of e5, that e5 is going to be open, and the queen doesn't want to be there when that happens. So after that, queen goes to f5, forcing the exchange, c1, pretty standard stuff, and then knight g5. Now this is where the fireworks started. In this position, Praggnanandhaa, the pawn on e5 attacking the bishop, knight captures, exchange of the rooks, and that's an engine precision move. That shows that the little guys are really, really booked up and understand this game very well. So rook to d1, bishop e7, and that's hitting on this pawn. And this is where a very, very interesting move was played. And this is another engine precision move. e4. Now, e4 is a pawn sacrifice. It's a bit complicated. The knight is hanging, this knight is hanging, the bishop is attacked. Everything's funny, but bishop takes knight when g5 was played. Bishop takes bishop. Now, bishop takes pawn. White has officially sacrificed a pawn. And that means he needs to have compensation for it. Surprisingly, the evaluation from the computer suggests that white is better, almost to the tune of a pawn. So the pawn sacrifice is actually very, very justified. This is what happens. Bishop goes to f6, hitting up the knight, and now the rook cannot really get out because of those mating ideas. Rook goes down to b7, and this is hitting on both the b7 and the f7 pawns. The only way to defend them both is by playing a very awkward move, knight b8, which holds the position for some time. Rook goes to e7, bishop goes to d5. Now, just taking a look at this position, it shows that Praggnanandhaa anticipated a lot of this and saw that black was going to be in a pretty difficult position, even for the pawn that they are up by. And he chose this, and you can see that it's really working well. He played quite a lot of time. He's about 15 minutes down on the clock. But having such a position with dominant bishops give you a compensation for the pawn that you sacrificed a few moves ago. So bishop goes to g7, no idea why I played that move. Rook to d8, bishop to e5, an inviting move, as if saying play f6. When you play f6, play b5. That's exactly what happened. I believe that he played that because he wanted these pawns kind of get dislodged from the bishop, because in this position they are kind of protected by the bishop, but once they move forward, the bishop has no way to get back because this rook is dominating that f7, the 7th one. So after that, bishop goes to b1, and of course, this is a tactic doesn't work. First, the king can capture the bishop for free, and if you capture the bishop, then there's a checkmate here. But of course, there's even a much stronger move. After the bishop captures, you can play a very nice bishop b3 move, which was the checkmate in 4. If you defend this with the rook, I guess if you spend a few seconds, you'll be able to see a checkmate into bishop times, rook check, rook f8, rook times f8, checkmate. And if you try to sacrifice, the bishop back, then again, it's the same thing that's going to happen. Bishop will capture bishop, and there's no way you can like this to be a mate. And again, if you go back here, the same thing happens again. Bishop times f7, and checkmate happens once again. So it doesn't play, of course, at this level, that way not happen. So if the bishop d1, knight advances to c6, and then rook goes to c7. If the bishop e6, the variation goes really high, and black is supposed to be opposite, which typically in most situations is drawish, but because of the nature of the position where black's king is, and because of this a4, f5, h4, h5, h6 push, White decided that I think I'll have compensation there. And because I cannot release the king again, you don't have time because the bishop is not hanging. So you're still stuck and trapped in that position. Well, maybe you can if you play bishop e7 and then f6, but you're going to lose 2 pawns and the position is a bit awkward. White is better than black. So black went back to d8, knowing that even though you cannot defend the pawns, whether the back rank met, rook times bishop, and then dominating the the seventh rank once again. So, and you keep progressing, no exchange. Now here it's just about how to find the finish. The position right now has moved to difficult endgame, equal material, opposite colored bishops, but the king is stuck. Black king is stuck on g8, has no moves and is on constant net threats. So basically, black's pieces can hardly move. So rook goes to b7, and this is just to find the move that just suffocate black until he gets into a rook position. So let's see how Praggnanandhaa will approach this game. So he brings the king forward, rook comes back, bishop comes, you can't capture it, bishop goes back. Then let's just move this faster until we get into the critical moment. Rook here, then bishop, then pawn push. Now, this is very, very critical at this point because this is where the ideas of winning are. They all happen around this area. So black needs to think carefully. White also needs to really be precise. Otherwise, the game will just be drawn. So what happened here is rook went back, bishop went back, rook went back. You can't capture the bishop, so you play around with the rook. Rook went back. Bishop goes to f6. Of course, there's no exchange going to happen. Just captured. And probably this is where things really got a little bit ugly because now there are two places to checkmate from. Rook down or rook maneuvering through this side. So I think Abdusattorov did not consider that very well. Of course, there were threats still there. If he hadn't captured, still white is planning to capture here. And when you capture here, then pawn check. When you get to capture that, and then the rook goes back again, and you cannot survive this kind of attack. But of course, the rook shouldn't be here or here. Otherwise, they'll get checks, and you will be able to checkmate in time. So still a tricky game. Let's see how it progressed. Now, king goes to f, just trying to release a bit of tension on the king. The rook goes to hold on the pawn, zone. Rook goes back, bishop check. King goes to e8. You might wonder why he never went to g8. I'll just explain that quite shortly. So bishop goes to b4. Let's first look at it. What happens if after this check, black actually move to g8? This is what will happen. Just zone again. Zone again. Bishop, waiting move, then block. And now the king can, get in. Just the zone, keep maneuvering. And now it's the idea I was talking about. The threat is here. Threat is here. The bishop has cut off the king. Either way, there's a mate coming. So rook check. King moves just a little. You can't take the pawn on h5 on h6. King check, get back. And finally, it was forced because there are two mates, rook here and rook here. So he has to do it. And of course, if you try playing a move like this, it ends so badly. Rook e8 straight. And then when you play this, you get checkmated. So you cannot do that. You cannot release the pressure at all. So when you capture rook times, then here this time we play. Then we can play rook here, and then from the bishop, and you just win a rook for free. Or you can play rook check here, and the only difference, but you either give away the rook or you move the king to e8, and then we have the bishop check, then you pawn push, and then the king gets forward, and there's no way to defend this. The bishop is basically free. So that is why you couldn't play to g8. So in this position, when after the bishop check, after the bishop check, bishop e7 check, bishop retreats to b4, and then we have rook coming for that, rook check, rook going to h8. And in that position, Abdusattorov Nodibek resigned, as there's no way to actually defend the pawn on h7, and after that, the pawn on h6 is going to turn into a queen. So this was a nice game. I thought it was a strategic masterpiece from Praggnanandhaa. Just sacrifice the pawn for nearly nothing and then just showcase the power of the bishop pair and recover all the material and outplay his opponent and win in such a fashionable style. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, share with your friends. Have a great day. Bye-bye.